Origin Chess, Homosuji reaction. This is now Ukraine is fighting Russia in Syria. What? But on task and purpose. Ukraine released footage of their special forces battling Russian troops inside Syria. I guess Middle East is anyone's battleground, I guess. Who cares about civilians, right? I don't know. This is insane. Like every time, even if Middle East has nothing to do with it, it gets introduced somehow. Now, in World War I, similar things were happening. That's why it was World War to begin with, right? The Great War. Only European countries were fighting each other, and yet it was a world war. Why? Because European countries had colonies in Asia, Africa. So this is kind of like not a surprise. Like Russia obviously has like fighting thing in like Syria and things like that for like decades now. I'm guessing Ukraine is similar as well. So yeah, Ukraine is fighting Russia there. So some political pressure or something, or like just simple troop pressure, like if fighting is happening in Syria intensely, Russia has to divert troops there or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, I guess we'll know what are the details behind all about it, right? Because it can't be just simple as like Ukraine is fighting in Syria, so Russia diverts troops there. Russia has more troops than Ukraine, so if Ukraine can do that there, Ukraine can do that in Ukraine. So I don't know. I feel like there might be some strategically important thing there. I don't know. But let's watch this one. It's going to be interesting. Remember, we'll flag my reaction. Don't forget to subscribe. So, that way I know which type of videos to react to more. I like videos like this, geopolitics and what is going on in the world. News usually doesn't tell you like exactly what is happening. News are usually biased in either way. So videos like this is like really important. There's real life lore that can tell you what is happening in the world. And then you can hear from your friends what they know about and realize like what type of news they've been, like consuming from which media. You can see the literal bias, what is there. It's always interesting to me when I see it like that. So that's this one.
The war in Ukraine, conflicts in the Middle East, and Africa are about to have a crossover episode. Ukrainian special forces aren't just fighting Russian soldiers on the front lines at home anymore. They're now engaging them in both Syria and Sudan.
That Ukrainian forces have struck Wagner-backed fighters inside Sudan.
In June 2024, the Ukrainian Main Intelligence Directorate (HUR) released footage showing their special operators coordinating with Syrian opposition rebels. Together, they launched attacks on Russian forces inside Syria. They hit Russian checkpoints, ammunition storage depots, and logistics convoys that were filled with supplies. Then Russian foot patrols were ambushed with small arms fire.
The main strategy they appear to be using is guerrilla warfare, with IEDs and RPG strikes. Since these Ukrainian commandos have no direct line to resupply for weapons or equipment, they've had to improvise. They reportedly created makeshift mortar tubes put together in-country to be used against Russian defensive positions. But how did the Ukrainian Special Forces team insert into Syria in the first place? It's nearly 1,000 miles away from Ukraine. You can't just hop on a plane from Kyiv and fly directly to Damascus airport without raising a couple of eyebrows. They could have been transported through various clandestine methods and channels. A team could jump on a commercial vessel and sail south through the Black Sea, then stop in Turkey.
I was about to say that like probably from boat or something. They are special forces, so the better can at least sneak into Syria.
Before traveling
Otherwise,
over
Call of
land
Duty
into
is a joke.
Syria. They could have flown into Iraq and then traveled over land where there's friendly checkpoints controlled by nations that are aligned with them all along that route. The war in Ukraine continues to rage on, which has led many to wonder why Ukraine would pull specialized troops away from the front lines and send them across the world to a seemingly unrelated conflict, especially when Ukraine is facing widely reported manpower shortages on the front lines. There are several
See what I was saying at the start, having hard time finding the words, but this is what I was basically saying, right? Like they can do that. If they can do that in Syria, they can do that in Ukraine. Why go to Syria? Pretty sure there's going to be some important objective or something. I don't know.
Scenarios for what their goals might be that we're going to get into. Matthew Orr is a Eurasia analyst at risk intelligence company Rain. He spoke to a publication called The New Arab, discussing the logic behind these operations, saying, quote, Kyiv likely believes that the few resources spent exaggerating the mere threat of such attacks on Russian interests in Sudan open the possibility of similar attacks across Russian activities in the Middle East and Africa, forcing Moscow to expend disproportionate resources to secure against such activities in new geographies. And there's some evidence—
I mean, I don't know, man, right? Knowing from the start of special operation to until now, Putin takes a lot of gamble. He might just say, fuck it, let's wait and see. Unless more attack happens, I'm not gonna think too much about it type of way. So maybe this is like long shot type of thing, I don't know.
To suggest this might already be happening, because in April 2024, a few months after the attack started, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced that they were sending additional troops to their positions inside Syria, specifically in the Golan Heights. This is exactly where the Ukrainian SF units are allegedly operating, according to reports and geolocated footage. The majority of these battles are taking place in this sensitive, disputed region in southwest Syria, bordering Israel. According to open source intelligence reports, this is where most of the Russian mercenaries, troops, and police are currently concentrated. This is where the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the Ukrainian conflict start to blur lines. If you were to have guessed where Ukrainian special forces would strike at Russia inside Syria, you probably would have guessed from the Kurdish-controlled north, or possibly an attempt at hitting their less...
What? I mean, in modern times, today's time, there are two major conflicts. Ukraine, Russia, Israel and Palestine thing, right? Gaza thing. Somehow Ukraine saw that, like, how about we merge them? Or like, just enough to confuse people? That is insane. They are like that close together, right? I don't know. Obviously, Russia is like, Russia is from Palestine support, right? Russia supports Iran. Iran supports Palestine. So that's where Russia is from, I guess. So I don't think this has anything to do with Israel-Palestine conflict, but my, like, cynical conspiracy mind thinking like Ukraine might be trying to do something there to, I don't know, either blur the line or something, or like confuse Russia or something, I don't know. But if they do get in that conflict, they're probably going to get in from Israel's side, because Russia is probably from the Palestine side. I don't know.
Guarded oil fields in the central part of Syria. Since the start of 2024, Moscow's forces have been observed creating 3 new forward operating bases and 14 observation outposts on the Syrian-controlled side of the Golan Heights, on the border with Israel. Reports indicate that Russian police have started to regularly patrol and operate inside the province of Qintar and Dara, which are immediately next to Israel's claimed border. This is a new development, because it's the first time in recent history that Russian troops have set up only a few hundred feet away from Israeli Defense Forces positions. So why are Russian forces building up new bases and increasing manpower on the border with Israel? Mauricio Molinari wrote a
the pressure, isn't it? Like I said, Russia is from Iran's side. Iran's trying to pressure Israel so they can come to the table or something, stop attack at Gaza. So Russia is trying to do pressure situation. I'm guessing Ukraine is screwing with Russia just there, just to screw with Russian interests wherever they can, I'm guessing.
Republica, where he explained its connection to the war in Ukraine. Israel's having frequent clashes with Hezbollah and pro-Iranian militias in that region. This gives Russian intelligence officers the ability to easily observe Western weapon systems capabilities, both defensive and offensive. They can gather valuable data on these weapons, which are some of the same type of weapons that they're facing inside Ukraine. And so the Ukrainian special forces that are striking inside Golan Heights against Russia might also be attempting to disrupt Russian intelligence gathering abilities. In the past, Russia has used Wagner forces for plausible deniability of their operations inside Syria. But what we're witnessing in the Golan Heights is very different. Russia has visible...
I can't, I don't know, man. This is so weird to me. Imagine Ukraine calling Israel. Don't worry, we got you. Like, what? Don't you have your own shit to worry about? Yeah, we're gonna fuck with Russia. That's our primary objective. Doesn't matter where.
Planted their flag. Molinari said in his article, quote, Russia's acting with deliberate visibility, moving military vehicles, constructing installations, raising the flag, playing the national anthem, and manning bunkers old and new, from which they can clearly observe the Israeli civilian centers in front of them. Russian troops are specifically creating observation posts in strategic locations like Bir al-Ajam, which has a clear view of Israel. Up until now, Israel and Russia has had this kind of unspoken agreement where they largely do not interfere with each other in Syria. So what's so special about the Golan Heights that seems to have attracted 100 different factions from around the world to fight over? To oversimplify things, before 1967, the Golan Heights was part of Syria. Then, after the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel captured it. In 1981, Israel annexed it, and since then, the United Nations and most countries around the world consider it to be Syrian territory occupied by Israel. Israel's occupied and administered the southwestern two-thirds of the Golan Heights. It's a hotly disputed region and a confusing tanglement of various factions and powers. So we have this situation where Russian and Syrian government troops are fighting against Syrian rebels and Ukrainian special forces in the north of the Golan Heights, while IDF troops are located just a few hundred kilometers away in the south. Russian troops have been deployed to Syria since 2015, with about 3 to 5...
All Russia needs is an excuse in any situation, right? I mean, it's not officially Israel's territory, but Israel annexed it. Russia says, that's good enough for me, I'm gonna get there. Nobody can really say, like, I'm directly attacking Israel, but at the same time, I'm also sticking to Israel, so it's just like, yeah, there you go.
5,000 troops stationed there at any given time. This is a mix of Wagner mercenaries, conventional troops, and police units. Before the invasion of Ukraine, the only direct action combat formation inside Ukraine's intelligence agency was a small special reconnaissance unit, which aided in the evacuation of Afghanistan's Kabul airport in 2021. After the war broke out, though, the need for an expanded intelligence service with military capabilities caused them to rapidly increase their numbers to 23 separate groups. Each of these groups is tasked with a very specific mission set, such as direct action, field reconnaissance, drone operations, and a host of other secret squirrel stuff that probably won't be declassified for another 75
Call of
years.
Duty shit.
Sergei Sakonkin, a senior fellow at the Jamestown Foundation, told Business Insider that the Ukrainian operations here in Syria may be part of some sort of tacit agreement between Western allies.
I'm not gonna lie, I always wonder, like, this kind of special forces unit, when they play like original Modern Warfare or like Trilogy or the latest Cold War, Black Ops thing with the Cold War, and like I think that was Black Ops 5, right? Yeah, Black Ops 1 was insanely good. Black Ops 2 was fine. 3, I don't know, like, I don't think I played it. 3 and 4 was like one of those microtransaction thing that, I don't know, people said campaign isn't that great. 5 was Cold War, which was really good. I played it. And 6 is now coming out, I guess. So basically that original Modern Warfare trilogy and this like Cold War Black Ops type of way. So when special forces play games like this, what do they think of? Like, this is over-exaggerated shit? Oh, this is awesome. It feels real to me or something. I don't know. Somewhat over-exaggerated, but that's what you expect from like Hollywood style thing of things, which is what Call of Duty campaigns are.
And Ukraine to battle Russian mercenaries in Africa and the Middle East in exchange for certain military backing for Ukraine in its war against Russia. This scenario suggests that Ukrainian commandos have a kind of plausible deniability when it comes to their missions in the Golan Heights. The geopolitical connections don't stop there, though. Russia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, has directly compared the situation in the Golan Heights to the situation in Ukraine's Donbass. Since their invasion of Ukraine, Russia has established various recruitment centers throughout Syria, offering money to people to enlist and fight for them inside Ukraine. The Syrian mercenaries are then given Russian documents and flown from an airbase in Syria to Russia. The best data I could find on this...
Damn. They're like, okay, we are in Syria, how to make this in our side, for now. Whenever, like any country is like doing some like overseas things or whatever, like in Middle East or something, goal is long-term political thing. But Russia's like, what about now? So how about we just create recruitment centers? Fuck it. Manpower. And obviously, like, if your life is shit because you're surrounded by countries that are trying to kill each other in your own city or country, bullets are flying all around, like artillery fire is happening, it's not a great place to live. At that point, like, fuck it, might as well, like, enlist for like some kind of fight, whatever money I can gather type of shit. So I can see like people enlisting. I can envision that. If your life is shit already, why the fuck not type of way?
comes from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights that observed around 2,000 soldiers from Syria had been deployed to fight on the behalf of Russia inside Ukraine so far. So these operations could be in part to slow down mercenary recruitment there, although that certainly wouldn't explain it entirely given the relatively low numbers. Fighting Russia inside Syria might also grant Ukraine an asymmetrical warfare advantage. This is about economy of force. Movies and video games have us believing that special forces are only sent on the most dangerous secretive missions, and that a single operator is a one-man army who could hold back an entire assault. The reality is these elite forces will have more of an effect in a clandestine mission like this one than they would on the front lines. It's like how my old squad...
Yeah, I think people know that, right? Whenever you have like something happening, you always see the action in video game, but you know like other side of it is also true, slow moving. Like they're not gonna show some clerk or some desk jockey or something who just like doing things which is also important. Even though I'm not gonna lie, in modern world game like that would also be fun if it's realistic. But yeah, slow moving thing and just like important enough things is also special forces part, but people don't want to do that. So you usually surround yourself with action related things. But these games kind of like imply that other things is happening as well, but you don't have anything to do with it type of way.
Leader used to always call me a very special tool. He was, of course, saying that I'm good for specific missions, I think. But plans of these attacks are nothing new. A member on our Discord channel reached out to me and sent me a leaked, classified American intelligence analysis document. The documents have been widely reported on in the media, and I made sure anything I share here won't get me sent to prison, although I can't say the same for the guy who originally leaked it. The pages claim that Zelensky had ordered a halt, a cease of the plans to attack inside Syria way back in December of 2022. Apparently the plans were scuttled, partly because it would have been too complex of an operation to pull off at that point. The American intelligence analysis was written last year in 2020.
All of that. If an American somehow leaks information about something like Ukraine, Russia, would America put him to jail just because America is helping Ukraine or something? Because that, to me, that would feel a bit stretched. You can't say treason because he didn't say anything against America. This is about Ukraine and Russia. You can't see like, oh, this is problematic. Like having stern words against him, like type of way makes sense. But jail, put him in jail, kind of feels like a stretch. How do you justify that? Like this has nothing to do with the US. Okay, US is helping Ukraine, but this doesn't affect US directly. Can US put someone like that in jail if somehow reveals some kind of information like that? America jailing an American about a conflict that doesn't directly has to do with anything with America? I don't know.
And it outlines the possible ramifications of a Ukrainian special forces deployment inside Syria. The American intelligence analysis believed that this kind of development would be highly unlikely, because if it happened, it could lead to Russian forces responding by supporting attacks against US forces in Syria. It also stated that another reason this attack probably hadn't already happened is because the US government was pressuring Zelensky not to operate inside Syria. But it states that if the plans went forward, they would aim to inflict enough Russian casualties to force Russia to bring reinforcements that were fighting in Ukraine, and would likely start to target Russian-controlled oil infrastructure inside Syria with UAV strikes, similar to the kind of UAV strikes we've seen Ukraine do recently by hitting Russian oil refineries. Lieutenant General Kirilo Budilov said that he vowed to destroy Russian war criminals anywhere in the world, wherever they are. So it could be a morale move. Budinov is in charge of the intelligence agency, and he likely planned the strikes in Syria and Sudan. Budinov's role has been to hit Russia using unconventional tactics. The fighting isn't just in the Middle East, though. We've also seen it in Africa as well. Videos surfaced of Ukrainian special forces battling it out in Sudan against Russian mercenaries and the RSF rebel group. A series of drone strikes hit Wagner-backed militia groups near the Sudan capital. Ukraine first quietly deployed special operators there back in late August, just days after the breakout of the civil war. Then, a series of FPV drone strikes hit Wagner and RSF forces in and around the capital region. These strategies and styles of drone attacks are essentially identical to the ones conducted against Russia and Ukraine. In November, videos began being released by what appeared to be Ukrainian special forces stalking the streets of Sudan under thermals and night vision goggles. The videos show a small team of 9 operators clearing alleyways and setting into position before rocket directly into the window of a nearby building that had several enemy fighters inside of it. After a couple more rocket shots, the occupants of the building began firing back. But as the non-thermal view indicates, it's pitch black outside during the attack, and they're essentially shooting blind. Sources within Ukraine's security and defense sectors confirmed these actions. By destabilizing Wagner's security positions and attacking them at vulnerable weak points, they're hoping to cause a disruption of their entire operations in Sudan. They're aiming to force troops to have to put up their own protection and defenses all over the country.
Alright, video games makes you think like night vision goggles and thermal goggles like that is like a nice tool to have, but it's not important. In some situation, those are not just important, those are the only thing that's necessary. If you don't have like thermal or like night vision goggles and it's pitch black, and even if it's not pitch black, your enemy can make it pitch black at night time, let's just say 12 to 3 or whatever at night. If you don't have like any of those equipment but your enemy has that as well, you're probably dead, right? Because you can try to light up the situation, your enemy probably will kill you because he can't see you, you literally can't see him, right? And when somebody's trying to kill you, they know how to move around and hide, right? It's not as simple as like who's there. It's just like you can't just, even if you get some idea who somebody's there, they're probably not there anymore, like moved. You're literally blind at that point.
Which in turn reduces their efficiency and speed at which they can operate. Additionally, the resources spent to send a handful of Ukrainian operators into Sudan is significantly lower than the resources that will be spent now by Russia to protect its own interests. This applies not just in Sudan, but across all countries Russia is currently operating in. What could some of the factors be for why the conflict has drawn both Ukraine and Russia here? Sudan is currently in the midst of a violent civil war. Russia has been dealing with the Sudanese government since 2017, working to both secure things like port access and permissions to build military bases, as well as training Sudanese troops and assisting them in putting down protests. The two warring sides are the Sudanese Armed Forces, or the SAF, under al-Burhan, who are currently still in control of the government. The rebelling side is the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, under Diaglo. Currently, the RSF holds a large portion of the southwestern corner of Sudan, and their control extends north into the capital city. The RSF are also trained and equipped by the Wagner Group, who are working to overthrow the Sudanese government. According to the latest reports from Sudan, about 90% of the arms and ammunition used by the RSF have been directly supplied by Russia. Though Wagner originally supported the sitting government in 2021, the economic incentive of securing resources like gold deposits favored supporting the rebels instead, who were organized under the Rapid Support Forces. Any gold mines gained here are critical resources for Russia. Companies directly tied to Wagner, such as the Morale Gold, are working inside of the Sudan since at least 2017. Part of this effort is in an attempt to hurt Russia's ability to support their war effort materially. One of the mission goals in Africa is to disrupt the broader effort of Russia in the Sahel region. This area south of the Sahara Desert includes countries like Niger, Chad, which are the latest states to kick American troops stationed out and opt for Russian advisors instead. Since the breakout of the invasion, Sudan has been a major ally and supplier of arms and ammunition to Ukraine, especially in the realm of small arms. If Wagner was able to help remove the sitting government in Sudan, they would not only have full access to the nation's raw resources, but cut off supplies.
My my comparison to World War I thing is not that far off, is it? The colonies no longer applies technically, right? Something always make African countries colonies of European countries. Like there's always some Americans are there, Russians are there, probably French are there, right? So there are a lot of countries are still kind of colonies. Even some other countries who are not colonies just by debt or something are kind of like colonies. So they're all acting colonies of Europe basically. And that is what Ukraine is like utilizing here, right? Putting pressure on Russia. I guess it's ingenious in a way, right? Whenever if you are if you are the one who's getting invaded, you're gonna come up with very different ideas to pressure your opponent or something. That is what basically is happening here, right? So we're gonna see many like spec op type of shit happening here. I'm thinking like when the conflict is over, who knows which side is gonna win. But when the conflict is over, 10-15 years after that, whenever like a lot of classified things become declassified, we're gonna have a lot of content, let's just say, that somebody can make a movie or game about it, because that level of shit is probably happening today with the special forces and shit like that. It would be very interesting thing.
To Ukraine to be able to defend themselves as well. Hence, from Ukraine's point of view, the need for intervention. In February of this year, Ukraine Special Forces published more videos and information showing they had captured Wagner troops and RSF fighters. 3 prisoners were shown, with one identifying himself as being a member of the Wagner group. It's always difficult to take anything a prisoner says at face value because we don't know if they're answering honestly or not because they're under duress. But the reason I bring it up is because it's more evidence of the war leaking out beyond the borders of Ukraine. This video was a bit more significant than previous ones, as prior to this, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense pulled the classic line of neither confirming or denying having troops in Sudan. In the interrogation video, however, the flag of Ukraine is plainly displayed on an operator's uniform. Since March of this year, we haven't seen any development in Sudan regarding Ukraine's role in the fight, other than roughly 100 operators under the Timar unit that have been working on training SDF forces against the RSF. Many factors are pointing to the collapse of Sudan within the year. But for now, we'll have to see how the fighting in Sudan and Syria plays out. I'm your
Yep, there you go. Far Cry 2 type of shit. There's always like 2 major side, 2 people with like a lot of medals and shit trying to fight civil war. Common people are suffering, obviously. Genocide happens, world don't even like hear about it, like the world moves on like it's like normal or some shit. It's not normal. But yeah, in African countries a lot of shit like this happens a lot, and I bet a lot of people don't even realize it. Like many African countries are going through this civil war type of phase right now. I've seen many real life lore video recently to know that. So that's just insane. Now obviously Ukraine-Russian conflict is also leaking there. Politics, a lot of politics gonna get involved here, obviously. Whenever people heard word politics and like, why are you talking about it? Politics means is just that, like beyond beyond the battlefield, right? Cold War mostly was politics in a way. That's why it was Cold War to begin with. So this is not Cold War, but you can see how things are leaking out outside of the Ukraine-Russia thing. Now, the longer the Ukraine-Russia thing stretches out, things like this is gonna happen. Right? Because at first it's like, are we going to instantly win? No, we're not going to instantly win. Are we going to instantly repel the forces? No, we're not going to do that as well. Is this war going to stretch out? Apparently it is. So things stagnate, things like move out of the place, things like this, which is insane. Right, well, that was now Ukraine is fighting Russia and Syria by channel Task and Purpose. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.